Hi. Happy Friday.
Friday.
Mike,
Hi, Karen. How are you?
well, can you give us the lowdown on
You're not going to ask me how I'm doing?
I didn't do that?
No, I don't think so.
Mike,
He said, I'm well, and then just went on into the question.
how are
I'm great. Terrell Jennings will be out, and Spillane will be questionable. Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Coming off of bye week, how did you feel practices went this week? And were you happy with the energy and everything?
I was. I felt like Monday got us going. It was a good day for us to get back in and kind of compete and go against it, just ourselves and not have to, specifically, have work through show teams or anything like that. So I thought that was good and got us back going. And then try to build throughout the week, and thought yesterday was good, and today, tried to just finish up a little bit of the on-field preparation, and still have plenty of work to do with meetings and stuff tomorrow, but again, continuing to try to build throughout the week, and see if we can't build that momentum going into the game.
Jared Wilson was carved up a few weeks ago in Cincinnati. He tries to practice this week. Just how fortunate is it for him and for the team that injury wasn't as serious as maybe it looked as easily?
Yeah, I don't. Again, however, sometimes it's it appears to be one thing, and you kind of see how it goes, and doesn't end up being as bad. Or sometimes it's every injury is different. But again, I'm glad that the way that the players that have been out have worked to get back in there. Jared is in that group, obviously. And so it'll be good to have him back in there. He's continuing to improve. And again, I don't want any of them to get injured. And if they are, I hope it's not as serious as what it looks when it happens.
Good to see Christian Barmore out there start to practice. Any update or cause for concern there? I know he's been out for
Yeah, those are just, my decision to bring him out towards the end of practice. And so, nothing, no concern there. He'd have an injury designation or some for the game, but, just, that's kind of how I chose to handle it today.
That running back 3 spot, I guess that's my words, with Terrell. Just how do you envision filling that role?
Yeah, Dearness will, probably get to the game and help us. And, we'll have to figure some things out now and this afternoon or tomorrow from the roster.
Mike, go back to the spring. I'm curious, would you kind of have the vision?
Spring.
Yeah.
I can barely remember yesterday.
I mean, it could be the whole year, but when you're thinking about how to build a culture of toughness, aside from, getting players who individually have good play demeanor and are tough.
That's probably that's the best way.
Is there anything more you
I
do
don't
as a
know.
collective?
I don't know. It's like, sometimes they either are or they aren't. And again, you can find ways to, sometimes you can harness the power of the elite. And like we say, that some of the players can help each other work through things or overcome, help them fight through injuries or get back quicker. Or I think that's probably the biggest way to build your culture. Just getting the right people, and then maybe, then they get their behaviors, lead to the culture that you want. And so, that's probably the easiest way when you're talking about toughness. That's probably the easiest way.
Mike, with overtime rule change, how does it impact your thinking to win the coin toss? Is it a pre-game decision or more of a in-game?
Probably more of an in-game one. But, those are things that we have to, to look at with the rules and, the time in the regular season versus how they play, how's overtime played in the postseason. So the only one we can worry about now is the regular season. Both teams get an opportunity to possess it. So, but that could be something where, in game that you would want to try to change based on, wind or anything else.
I know you guys are focused on the Bills, but Philip Rivers coming back and played against some almost
20 years ago. Just have any thoughts on him?
I don't. I mean, I always loved playing against him, a competitor. Great for this league, and see how it goes.
Thinking about making a comeback?
Hell no. Nobody wants to see that.
Working on a future story about which one of the guys in the locker room right now would make the best coach. Wednesday decided to, I don't know. A lot of guys have talked about Jack Gibbons, including Jeremy Springer. I wondered if you had a thought as to you see a guy in that locker room who might be a good coach.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of guys that could or would, and make different impacts. I mean, certainly, Gibby has great knowledge and communicates, and I think that, I think Marcus Jones could be a guy that could coach and play, and there's just a lot of guys. I mean, I think KC, I think Harold, I think that these guys that it's not all about just knowing football as being a coach. It's about finding the right way to reach players and knowing sometimes how much to give them and how much not to give them, and just depending on what level you're talking about coaching. I mean, you can make an impact a lot of different ways coaching. So, and again, anybody that I've coached or played, and again, there are a lot of guys out there that gone on to coaching at different levels, and try to stay in touch with them. And somebody helped me progress and become a coach. So, try to do the same thing.
Mike, in the locker room, we've seen Nelson Williams and Will Campbell both walking around. They seem very involved with the team still, despite being on IR. What does that say to just have them as involved as they are for when they are potentially ready to come back?
Yeah, we'll get them back. We have a plan for each guy. And again, I appreciate them being good with the plan that we have and talking about being in the meetings and then getting out of meetings early, go to rehab so that there's some timing and we're not overloading the training room. And then usually a week before they can start practicing, we'll get them into meetings full time and, kind of go from there and see. And whether that's at, 3 weeks or that's at 5 or 6 weeks, it's all different, but that's kind of how we, plan it out with players that are on injured reserve.
Mike, across the league, it feels like more common to see like defensive player contribute more on the offensive side than the other way around, right? You did itself as a tight end. Tonga, Marcus Jones play on the offensive side. What do you think that makes easier or more natural for that transition for the defensive player?
Yeah, I think that's great. There's I wouldn't see, too many offensive linemen going over there and playing defensive line. I mean, receivers, I'm certainly not going to go over there and tackle anybody or want to hit anybody. Maybe a few, but they talk a good game. Yeah, I just think it probably, I don't know. I hadn't really thought of it much. It just was a specific role. You try not to give them too much. Maybe defensive guys are just better than offensive guys. I don't know.
On all those years, you've done the production meetings with the networks before games. Is this one sort of fun when JJ is part of that, given your past history? I think
Yeah, and I've got a lot of respect for JJ, the player, and the person and the job that he does, and I think just hearing from former players, about what we're doing and what they see, I think that's always a good perspective. To think that, hey, we're heading in the right direction, and they kind of see what we're trying to do. So, that was good. The conversation that we had.
Tricks?
Having one of the lower passer ratings against the blitz as a rookie to now having one of the best this season. How have you seen that area of his game grow, and what's allowed him to be so much more?
Probably just patience, patience and, know where he wants to go with the ball. I think the receivers have all helped him out and, done a good job. I think the protection, it starts with the protection and making sure that, he's putting guys where he wants them. So he knows, the quarterback knows, if he's hot or if he's not hot. And, but running backs have got to be able to protect and pick up blitzers. And, then that's not panicking and taking off and running and staying in transitioning and transferring up into the pocket.
Mike, one of the biggest critiques of this team over the last 2 years has been a lack of discipline, at least by the penalties against Metro. If you look at that this year, it's much improved in the positive direction. What would you attribute?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, is penalties I don't really have time on a Friday afternoon to get in and talk about discipline as it relates to penalties. But again, I think that there's penalties that we have to be very conscious of and make great decisions, and and discipline of jumping off sides or the line of scrimmage, and but I also see guys that line up off sides and it's not called, and then some other team lines up maybe off sides and it gets called, and the inconsistency. So it's like, well, the discipline or what you let a player get away with, or again, we try to show them the rules. We try to tell them to play aggressive within the rules, and so not going to compare this to that or the discipline because we had penalties early in the season. That's kind of settled down. Maybe we're figuring it out a little bit, but I just again, you just try to teach the rules and teach them kind of what the officials are looking at to try to get the mechanics of what they're going through, or DPI if I'm not playing the ball. If you're face guarding, there's contact, and we teach receivers to go back if the guy's not playing the ball. So I don't know. There's a fine line between the discipline of it and being aggressive. But it's certainly the pre-snap penalties can hurt and are sometimes hard to overcome against a good team. So I don't know whatever happened before I got here.
Mike, I know you played, most of your defense three-corner nickel and a lot of base against a team that loves to throw to the tight ends and obviously runs the ball. I'm curious just your thoughts on playing free safety is maybe a way to split the difference, given how Dell's played in coverage this year.
Yeah, I'm sure that we have a lot of different ways, and Kincaid and Knox will all be tough, and then we know how Hawes blocks and what he can do. So we'll have to certainly defend the tight ends that played really well for these guys. Thanks. Have a great Friday.
Thanks, Mike.